A prison in Iran is not a prison. A judge in Iran is not a judge. There is no courts. There is no law. They apply Sharia law, which is like an Islamic law. And by that law, even speaking, or in the case of my father, thinking against the regime can be punished by death. So you have to imagine, like when you have like such a system built up, which has no resemblance to any court, to any legal system, to any government in the world, this is a foreign terrorist occupation taking place there. So the people that are brought to Evin Prison, regular people, starts with the regular people, students who are protesting on the streets, women's rights advocates who are speaking up for, not to be forced to wear a mandatory hijab, or like not to be beaten up and killed for showing a strand of hair. So it starts with a bare minimum of survival. These people are put into sham trials. They have no legal defense. And then they are given long, long prison sentences for basically nothing, for basically basic human rights. And there are, of course, like when you're speaking to the prisoners there, torture chambers in there. You can hear the screams of children as young as 12 years old. It's an absolute human rights atrocity dungeon that you see in there. And of course, execution waves. Every 4 hours right now, according to the human rights organizations, one innocent Iranian is hanged to death, usually by the morning. They're hanged from cranes for people to see.
You're listening to East to West. I'm your host, Sarah Martinez Amir, reporting from Jerusalem. In a dramatic and symbolic move, the Israeli Air Force has struck the gates of Iran's infamous Evin Prison, long known as a bastion of repression, torture, and fear. This wasn't just a military strike. It was a blow to the very institutions that the Iranian regime uses to silence dissent. It's a moment heavy with meaning for Iranians inside and outside the country. And joining me today is a very special guest, Gazelle Sharmahd. She's an Iranian activist and daughter of the late Jamshid Sharmahd. He was a journalist, an Iranian dissident who was kidnapped by the regime during a trip to Dubai, secretly transferred to Iran, tortured, and ultimately executed for daring to speak out. Her voice is powerful, just like her father, deeply personal and painfully relevant. Gazelle, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Your father was a courageous voice against the regime and paid, unfortunately, the ultimate price for it. As you watch the Islamic Republic seemingly brought to its knees, especially after the symbolic strike on Evin Prison, how are you feeling?
Now, my father was executed by this regime after 4 years of torture last October. And since then, I've been wearing his pin and walking his path. But I don't know if you believe in afterlife or not, but it feels like all of our freedom fighters are up in heaven and they are turning history right now. So it feels like justice is finally coming down. And it feels liberating to see the torturers, the kidnappers, the murderers and mutilators of not just my father, but thousands of fathers, thousands of children, thousands of mothers, brothers, and sisters, seeing them right now unable to torture us and to kill us, but to be taken out. So it feels wonderful, and especially Evin Prison, though my father was not held in Evin Prison, a lot of political prisoners, women rights advocates and dissidents, and the elite of Iranian society is held in prison. That's the joke that many people in Iran say. They say Evin University, because the inmates of this prison are so highly educated, and the people keeping them in there, the regime is obviously not. So it is great. Because we have internet shutdown, we're not able to communicate with the people on the ground to see what is going on. But hopefully there is a movement to liberate the prisoners, bringing them out. And we're hoping that also the safe houses, the places where people like my father and high-profile opposition figures are held, that they're going to be liberated too. And that's where the big movements start to liberate the country.
Share with us what this place, Evin Prison, how the regime uses it to crush dissent and what kind of human rights violations happen behind its walls.
Just looking at the Islamic regime and understanding that this is not a government, we can understand that a prison in Iran is not a prison. A judge in Iran is not a judge. There is no courts. There is no law. They apply Sharia law, which is like an Islamic law. And by that law, even speaking, or in the case of my father, thinking against the regime can be punished by death. So you have to imagine, like when you have like such a system built up which has no resemblance to any court, to any legal system, to any government in the world, this is a foreign terrorist occupation taking place there. So the people that are brought to Evin Prison, regular people, starts with the regular people, students who are protesting on the streets, women's rights advocates who are speaking up for, not to be forced to wear a mandatory hijab, or like not to be beaten up and killed for showing a strand of hair. So it starts with a bare minimum of survival. These people are put into sham trials. They have no legal defense. And then they are given long, long prison sentences for basically nothing, for basically basic human rights. And there are, of course, like when you're speaking to the prisoners there, torture chambers in there. You can hear the screams of children as young as 12 years old screaming in there. So it's an absolute human rights atrocity dungeon that you see in there. And of course, execution waves every 4 hours right now, according to the human rights organizations. One innocent Iranian is hanged to death, usually by the morning. They're hanged from cranes for people to see. So that's just to give you a little bit of an insight of what that is. It's not a prison where thieves or actual like criminals are held. This is where the criminals hold human beings, freedom fighters, lawyers, university professors who would not bow to the laws of the Islamic regime, but would teach truth and integrity and values. And that's in a nutshell what Evin Prison is.
You mentioned that there's no internet connection right now in Iran. It's completely shut down. But from what you were hearing from your family who is in Iran right now, before the internet went out, how are they feeling inside the country? Are they scared? Are they hopeful?
A mix of all of those feelings, I would say, from everybody that I have spoken with, and from the big diaspora that we have. We're trying to hear all of the different sides from inside of Iran. First of course, they're scared. Nobody wants war. Nobody in Israel wants war. Nobody in Germany, America, or Iran wants war, right? That's the last thing that we want. But this war did not begin last Thursday. This war began in 1979, when this Ayatollah regime illegally seized Iran and its ministries and the country and waged war on the Iranian nation for the last 46 years. They started executing, massacring the Iranian people, then taking the wealth of the Iranian people and start massacring the people outside of the country. So this war is a half a century war, and the people are tired of war. And sometimes it is inevitable. So what we're seeing right now, the strikes were inevitable when you have a regime that builds up proxy groups and proxy armies and starts bombarding other nations, other sovereign states. This is what we're coming for, right? Like nobody was expecting anything else. So the people are less afraid of being bombarded because they've seen that the Israelis are doing precision strikes and targeting the oppressors of Iran. And they made it very clear in their speeches, this is not a war with Iran. This is a war with the enemies of Iran, the Islamic regime. And the people hear that, of course, over there. But what they're really afraid of is this regime, because anytime this regime is weakened, it knows that the people will come to topple it. So preemptively, they go out and they strike at the people. They imprison more people. They harass the families of political prisoners. They torture them. Executions are on a rise again. So the people are nowhere safe in this country. We don't have bunkers there. We don't have anything, safe zones inside the country where the regime can't reach you. So the people are afraid that the regime will retaliate on them. And with the internet shut down, they can't even show us what's happening inside. So we have to try with different ways to get them to have some internet access to show what the regime is doing to them.
You've mentioned Iran's proxies. Can you go into a little bit more detail how Iran essentially exports the terror that it inflicts on its own people to the rest of the region here in the Middle East, but not only, also attacking dissidents abroad, including in the United States and in Europe? Your father, unfortunately, also experienced that, several attempts against his own life.
Let me explain that to you by correcting actually what you said. You said Iran's proxies. These are not the proxies of Iran. Iran is under siege. You said Iran kills its own people. The people of Iran are not the people of the Ayatollahs. How do we know? When Ayatollah Khomeini and his Khomeinis came to Iran, they were flown in from the outside, from the Islamic, Arab Islamist schools of Karbala or Najaf in Iraq, where they were trained on Arab Islamism, colonialism, Arab colonialism. They were flown in on an Air France flight to Iran, and the Ayatollahs came with the most prominent words of, "We will burn Iran to light the flame of Islam everywhere in the world." So which leader of a nation, imagine like your leader in Israel would come and say, "We will burn Israel to light the flame of Islam everywhere." Would you think this is your government, or would you think this is a foreign invasion? Somebody wants to burn our country down and take it over for Islamism. So that's the first misunderstanding. The Ayatollahs are not Iran. The Ayatollahs don't see the people of Iran as their people. Who is their people? Their people are the people who for the last 46 years have gained the Ayatollah support, financial support, emotional support, ideological support, policy support, media support. So who have these Ayatollahs supported with everything they have? Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, all of the militias in Iraq, all of the militias in Syria. Those ones, the Hamasis, the Hezbollah, those people are the people of the Ayatollahs. Those are the ones that get millions of dollars of Iranians' money every single year. Iranians are dying on the streets. They're dying from hunger. Their houses are crumbling down. They have earthquake and water shortages and food shortages, and the economy is collapsing. Iran is not the nation of the Ayatollahs. These people outside are. So they're growing their empire outside of Iran, just using the territory of Iran. So once you understand that, it is clear that this is not really proxies, like as in using another group, but this is the extension just of the Ayatollah and of the caliphate. Remember, the Ayatollahs are part of the Islamic caliphates that they're building, and that is the mindset that they have. That's why they kill Iranians, they kill Jews, they kill Americans, because those are their enemies, and then they support the Arab Islamist terrorists, jihadists, which are their people.
What do you say to protesters out on the streets of Europe, the United States, protesting against this war to take down the Ayatollah regime, most of whom are Westerners, white Americans who have never really stepped foot in the Middle East, conflating the war, let's say, in Gaza with the conflict against the Islamic regime of Iran, even holding posters glorifying Khamenei and banners that read "Hands off of Iran"?
We have, I think, already have several studies, and I think the American intelligence brought out articles that most of these so-called rallies or encampments or whatever we've seen are not grassroots, but they're orchestrated and organized by the Islamic regime for their benefit, of course. And you can see that because they're so systematic. Everybody has the same flag. Everybody has the same slogans. Everybody comes out with the same message. During the Women Life Freedom movement, we had protests, grassroots protests, real protests all over the world. We couldn't agree on which flag to have, which slogan to say. So that's real grassroots. That's where you can see like people are not like on the same page. When it's organized from above, when it's coming from above the orders, like from Qatar and from the Islamic regime, you can see a very systematic and everybody looks the same kind of thing. That's number one. So first of all, these protests are not real protests, but there is an infiltration of Europe and of America by Islamists in the last, I would say, 2 decades, where people in Ivy universities in Europe, in Berlin, in London, have been brainwashed over decades and decades through the media, through academia, through their teachers, through their history department, through their political science department, that are infiltrated by these jihadists to learn a different history, which is not based on facts, to learn different realities, which are not based on facts, and to basically brainwash the youth, the new generation of the Western countries, to bid in the favor of the Islamists. How do we know that? Not just by these facts that we have, but we in Iran, we lived that. Going back to the 1970s in Iran, you would see students in the streets protesting against the Iranian government. You would see women protest. You would see people coming to the streets with genuine, like grievances that every society had. But then it was hijacked by the Islamists. And the media portrayed these protests as a way of telling the world this was a revolution, as an Islamic revolution that was to topple the government of Iran and replace it by an Ayatollah regime. Now, why is this absolutely insane? If we look at our protests right now in America, in all of these campuses that you see in America, even though some of them are infiltrated and led, as I said, by these Islamists, you also have naive young students who think they're doing the right thing, who've been brainwashed by their teachers year after year to believe a lie, right? Like the Israelis are colonizers. The Arab Islamists are the poor victims. Even though history shows 1,400 years of colonization by Arab Islamists, and everybody in the Middle East knows that, but that's not what they're teaching in the West, right? They're completely reversing everything that we know. And so when students start believing that, they come to the streets, they take part in these protests, they are really brainwashed to believe that. Media shows attention on there. And now imagine these protests would go actually to DC, take over Washington, replace the flag of America with an Islamist flag, replace the president with another Khomeini. That's not what America wants, right? Like, even though people take part of it, Americans don't want to be replaced by an Ayatollah system. And looking at just these protests and just these brainwashed students, you would have the impression that's what America wants. That's what reality is not like that. Reality is very different from what media portrays, what social media portrays. People are intelligent enough to understand criminal ayatollahs being on your side means you're not on the right side of history. And I still believe like most of the people understand that.
This week, Whoopi Goldberg came under fire for comparing life under the Islamic regime to the Black American experience, which faces discrimination in the US. But that's something that many Iranian dissidents and Iranians in general have found deeply offensive. As an Iranian woman, what's your response to that? And can you describe for us what life is under this theocratic regime? What does it truly feel like?
Thankfully, though I was born in Iran, I never needed to live under this boot of Islamism and Sharia law. I was raised in Germany and then in America for the last 20 years. So as an American also, I would like to respond to her because I know our constitution. And in Iran, before the Islamists took over and replaced the Iranian constitution with Sharia law, women were free, women were voting, women had suffrage before many European countries had suffrage. So that was the Iran that we had. In history, Iranians value women. We had women leading empires. We had women warriors. So that is Iran. But Islamism is very different. Islamism is based on Sharia law. So Ms. Whoopi Goldberg, where in our constitution do we have apartheid? Do we have any kind of criminalization of women? I can show you the girls of Iran with their eyes shut out because they went into the streets to protest. I don't see Black Americans, their eyes being shut out, raped in prison, and hanged from cranes because they wanted to protest. This is institutionalized inside of Iran. Per Sharia law, women in Iran are half worth a man. That means when you're in law, as a woman, your voice is half worth that of a man. Where in America would you see that in a courtroom, that a Black person's voice is half, by law, half worth that of a white person? In Iran, under the Sharia law, women have to ask permission of a man to be married, to travel. They cannot sing, they cannot dance, they cannot ride a bike. This is institutionalized, again, under the law. We don't have laws that forbid Black Americans on what to wear, if they can sing, if they can dance, who they can marry. Do we have that? No. Is there racism in America? Absolutely. And we should all be loud about it. But comparing that to institutionalized Sharia law, that by law they can rape you, and that's what's happening in Evin Prison, by the way. If you're a virgin and they want to kill you, they can by law rape you first, because they believe if you're a virgin and you're killed, you will go to heaven. So you would be raped by law, by the guard, to make sure that when they kill you, your soul wouldn't go to heaven. Do we have such a law in our constitution, America, Ms. Whoopi Goldberg? No, we don't. So that's why people are really outraged when people try to compare racism, which we have in Iran too. We have everywhere, like racism. We haven't abolished racism. We still have to work as a society on it. Absolutely clear. But please, please don't ever compare that to Sharia law or Islamic occupation. You don't want to live there ever.
We're now hearing serious talk of regime change. President Trump even recently posted, if the current regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? Is there, in your view, a viable alternative leader or group that's ready to take over? Some are calling for the Shah's son to step in. Is that the right move in your eye?
Let me first correct the term regime change, because many people use it. Regime change, we have used that in Iraq and Afghanistan, where somebody from the outside comes in, sees a regime that is a government there, and then wants to replace it. And that usually does not work. What we see in Iran is not a regime change, because the Islamic regime is not a regime. It's a foreign occupying force. So what we're actually talking about inside of Iran is liberation. Just like we liberated France, you know, the French were under occupation of the Nazis for 4 years. We didn't talk about regime change. We didn't ask the French, hey, do you have an alternative for the Nazis? Well, it was very clear. This is an occupation by a genocidal Hitler regime, and the French want to be liberated, and we helped them. That's exactly what's going on inside of Iran. We had a government of Iran, which was the Shah, the father of the crown prince that you just mentioned. That was our government. Then we were occupied by Arab Islamist forces that wanted to destroy us. So now we need liberation. And America stands with nations that want to liberate themselves from occupation. So that's why we need to get these words straight. Yes, Iran needs to be liberated. They want to do it on their own. They don't need any help, any boots on the ground. They appreciate when they see help from Israel right now, but it does not need to be a war, because 90% of the people are ready to go there. What needs to happen is from the outside to signal exactly what Israel has signaled. We're on the side of the people. They have a right, and that's when the world leaders need to talk to the Iranian people. Iranian people have the right to liberate themselves and free Iran again, and we're not talking to the oppressors. So it has to be clear, all of these talks, nuclear deals, whatever perks the regime had, is off the table. That gives the Iranian people the backing and the okay that they will not be betrayed by another Obama deal or Biden deal or whatever deal we had that saved the Islamic regime. And to your last question, who better as the to lead this? And the Crown Prince of Iran has already spoken about leading the transition. A transition always needs a leadership figure. In France, it was General de Gaulle who was leading it, but also they were forming a government in exile. That means all of the NGOs, all of the political actors, all of the engaged opposition figures outside of the country also have a role. They can rally and form their coalitions around the Crown Prince's leadership in each country and start petitioning their governments, stand together and be ready for the transitional phase. So yeah, I cannot imagine anybody else who would do that. And I would, I'm very, very close with his family. Both of our families are close. There's high respect there for what he's doing, what his family has been doing. And yeah, this would be the obvious reason, the obvious choice, I would say.
Gazelle Sharmahd, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today and give us some insight into the suffering that the Iranians have suffered for over 46 years, but also the potential future that lies there to get rid of this Ayatollah regime and to liberate Iranians once and for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the great people of Israel. We've been side by side for millennia, liberated ourselves, fought together, and I'm so glad that we're continuing that right now and writing history together.